So we just spent some time in the 2.3 lecture videos learning how to find midpoints by hand, and then also learning how to find the relative frequency, the cumulative frequency, and the cumulative relative frequency all by hand. So now we want to take a minute and learn a different way to do this. And what I'm about to show you might very well be an assignment for you depending on your instructor for this semester. So pay close attention if it's a project assignment, because then you have to do everything I'm going to do. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up a spreadsheet program that has the beginnings of this table already typed in. Now, me personally, I have this spreadsheet posted as part of a Canvas assignment. So if I go to Chapter 2, Project 3, and I click on that, actually I'm going to right click and open a new tab, it will have the assignment right here. And it says the project document with the instructions is at this link, and then I'm going to post this video for how to do that assignment. All right, so I have the assignment document. This particular assignment document just has instructions of what we have to do. So it's not going, we don't need a copy of this. We're just going to use it for information. So we want to make sure that we're logged into our Google account. So up in the right corner, you can actually see I have a picture of my two Black Lab mixes up there. And if I let my mouse hover, it'll tell me that I'm signed into my Google account. So you absolutely need to be signed into a Google account, either your school Google account or your personal Google account. It doesn't really matter which one, if you're going to do this as a Google spreadsheet. If you're not going to do it as a Google spreadsheet and you're going to do it as an Excel spreadsheet, then that's fine. You can just download it. Okay, so log into your Google account if you have one, and every student does, and then you're going to make a copy. So if you click on the link, it will take you to the spreadsheet that I have right here. Now, this spreadsheet is not owned by you. You don't get to start typing in it. It is owned by me, actually, as lead faculty, or by your instructor if they have a different version. So you will need to make a copy. So you have to go to File and make a copy. Or if you want to work in Excel, you download as an Excel file. That would be how you do it. You could also download it as a CSV file, but that's a little stranger, but it can be done. So download as an Excel file, but the easiest way is to just make a copy. Be logged into your Google account and make a copy. And for the record, since you're working in Google, it'd be easiest if you were in your Chrome browser. All right, so I'm going to click make a copy. For the sake of grading and other reasons, it's easier for your instructor if you put your name with this, in particular your last name, unless your last name is really common like Smith or Fisher, in which case you might want to put your whole name, right? So one way or another, put your name with it. It's just helpful. It's not strictly required, but helpful. So then you click make a copy, and you will have a version that will be yours that you'll be able to work on. All right. So now we are going to find the midpoints. So the easiest way to do this, oh, and we're also going to take notes on what we are doing, because we're going to use those notes, because this is not the only time that your instructor might assign something like this. So you need to have detailed notes for yourself on how we do this in a spreadsheet program. Now, the easiest way to start is to not start with the first class midpoint, no matter what. Period. I usually start with the second one. So let me highlight it in yellow just for you. You don't have to highlight it in yellow. It's just so you can see. And this is the foundational midpoint that we will use to find the rest of the midpoints. Now, the way to find midpoints we just learned in the notes is to take lower class limit plus next lower class limit, add them up and divide by 2. So that's your first instruction to yourself. To find the foundational midpoint, which I would recommend being in cell, let me think, I think it was B3, but I'll just make sure. Yeah, B3. The spreadsheet program is built like Battleship, if you remember that game. So it has columns that are lettered and rows that are numbered. So in cell B3, you want to take equals parentheses lower class limit plus next lower class limit, close your parentheses, divide by 2. That's how you make it work. That formula. Write it down. Okay, so in here, In cell B3, I will type equals. That cues that it's going to be a formula. You can see that the size of the equal sign changed, and so now it's expecting a formula. And then parentheses. Now the lower class limit for the class I'm in is 40, plus the next lower class limit is 50. So it's 40 plus 50. It's always lower plus next lower. Close your parentheses and divide by 2. And for the record, the division button is next to your shift key on your keyboard. It's right here, right there. That's your division button right there. Just so you know. I was having a couple students wondering where it is. Right? So 40 plus 50, close your parentheses, divide by 2, and then hit enter. That is your foundational midpoint. And your midpoint should be between the two numbers that are the lower and upper class limits. 45 is between 40 and 49. If it isn't, you've done something wrong. All right, now how do you find the rest of the midpoints? Well, if you read the assignment, it says you have to find things with formula dragging, right? So we're going to have to find a formula that will allow us to find the rest of the midpoints with dragging. And the way to do that is to find the width. So let's find a couple things. So the rest of the midpoints, you take the foundational midpoint and you add your class width. Foundational midpoint, oh, and this will be in cell, you start with cell B4, right? Cell B4, you're going to take your foundational midpoint plus your class width, right? So that would be equal to, so let's look at it. I'm here in cell B4, right? Column B, row 4, cell B4 would be equals B3, which is the number 45, but I'm using the cell reference plus, and then I'm going to need to find the width. Oh, okay, so wait, we need to figure that out. So class width. Well, remember from the notes, we learned the class width is the difference in consecutive lower class limits. So if you take the next lower class limit minus the previous lower class limit, or I guess I should just say minus lower class limit. Let's do it that way. And these notes are not perfect, right? We're writing down ideas for ourselves for how this is going to work, right? You might want to add or subtract to them depending on your own predilections and what you need for when you do these problems. So if I look at this particular table, I can see my lower class limits are 40, 50, 60, 70. They're going up by 10, right? If you take 50 and you subtract 40, you're going to get 10, right? So it'd be 50 take away 40 equals 10. This is our example. Of course, every problem is going to have their own, right? So in every table, there will be their own class width. Class width is not always 10. It just depends. So we can make a little note. This changes from problem to problem. We don't want to fool ourselves into thinking it's always 10. That's just a specific example. Okay, so in our case, it would be B3 plus, and then that class width in our case would be 10, right? But the class width gets put right there. Okay, so let me see. So B3 plus 10. 10 is the class width on this one. Matter of fact, we can make a little note to ourselves down here. Class width is 10, right? I can even type it. Equals 50, take away 40 is 10, right? So that's why I'm adding that piece in every time. All right, now it said formula dragging. So you have to learn how to drag a formula. So we have a formula in this cell. So you click back up on the cell with the B3 plus 10. And it has this little blue box around it to show that it's highlighted. In the bottom right corner of the blue box, there's a little dot. If you're in Excel, it's a little box. You want to move your cursor so that it's hovering above that dot. And the cursor will turn from an arrow into a plus sign. then you want to click and drag your mouse or your cursor down that column, and then lift up on your left mouse button and it will fill in the column for you. The other way to do it is, if you have the B3 plus 10, sometimes if you don't have a mouse and you're working on a laptop, it can be a little hard to do that way. So you can use the copy paste feature. You can copy, Control C, or edit, copy, Control C. If you're on a Mac, it'll be Command C. So copy, and then I can go to this next cell, edit, paste, Control V, or again on a Mac it'd be Command V. So you can Command V, Command V, Command V, Control V, Control V, Control V, depending on your machine, down all the way down the column, rather than the dragging feature if the dragging won't work for you because you don't have a mouse. All right, so we take that equals B3 plus the width, and then we drag it down the column, right? I'll just put width right here. There. I was putting that arrow there just so you guys could see the width goes in there, but all right, and then we're going to drag it down the column. Now there is one midpoint we didn't find this way. So all the midpoints, we found the foundational midpoint with the official formula. Then we found the rest of the midpoints with dragging. Now this first midpoint we didn't find, but we could, because if moving down the column was adding 10, then this one must be equal to B3 minus 10, right? Subtracting 10. And there we have that one. So you could fill it in a variety of ways, but that's how to find the first one. Okay, so we have our midpoints all filled out with draggable formulas. And we've reviewed how to find class width, how to find midpoints, which is right here, that's the official formula. How to find class width is down here. And in the middle is how to use that width to find other midpoints. All right, we're all done with midpoints. Now let's move on to the total. Because if we're going to find the relative frequency, we need the total right here. Now, I can tell that in the bottom right corner, I can see what it's going to be, because that's the beautiful thing about spreadsheet programs, is that they'll add them for you. However, we want to do this with an official formula. So if we go down here, we type equals, you can see that it knows what you want to do. Sum. Sum means to add. So I want it to add from C2, which is up here, all the way down to C8, right? It's going to add them. It put a little orange box around them. And it says if I hit the tab button on my keyboard, it'll fill in that formula for me, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to hit the tab button, and there it is. And you can see the formula is still up here in the formula bar. There have to be formulas in your formula bars. You cannot just type these numbers. That is worth no credit. The whole point is for you to learn how to use these formulas to fill out a spreadsheet like this. So I and your instructor, whoever that may be, will need to click on this cell and see the formula for the sum up here. So either type it or your spreadsheet program will find it for you. All right, now the relative frequency. Oh, let's make notes. To find the total of the frequencies, well, it's just the total. Right? We all know what it means. It's equals sum, and it'll be C2 to C something, right? And that number will change from problem to problem. I'm going to put a little arrow on that because it changes. This particular problem, it only went to C8 because that was the last row was 8. But of course, if the table's larger, it'll be a bigger number, right? So it'll be C2 to C something. Right? All right. Now for relative frequency, well, we learned in the notes that relative frequency is frequency turned into a decimal. And we do that by taking the frequency and dividing it by the total. All right, well, so we're going to find the relative frequency in cell D2. And it's going to be equal to C2 divided by the total. So let me go right to it. So right here is D2. It's the top relative frequency right there. Equals C2, because that's the frequency, divided by, and here we have a choice. We can either just type 165, which is fine because that's what the total was, and that will work, right? If we type divide by 165, if I press enter, it automatically drags it for me. Isn't that nice? And I just hit the little check mark and say, yep, that's what I wanted. Beautiful. So what it did was it took that formula and dragged it down the column for me. Lovely. Now the other way to do it is using a cell reference, but you have to be clever about it. So you can't just type C9. C9 is where the 165 is sitting. So you would think, oh, if I just type equals C2 divided by C9, that'll be perfect. Let me show you what happens. If you drag that, it breaks because the C9 won't stay. It changes to C10, which has nothing in it. So you're taking 8 and dividing by 0, which is what that little thing says right there. It's dividing by 0. No, 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 no. No good for us. So I'm going to hit the little X mark. Nope. You have to have a draggable formula, right? So you can't just have C9. So what could you do? Well, you can lock C9 in place. And the way to do that in a spreadsheet program, both Excel and Google Spreadsheet, is to hit $ to the C. That locks the C in place. And then $9, and that locks the 9 in place. So we're taking C9 and we're fixing it. It's called a fixed reference. You're locking it in place. It will not change as you drag it down. And again, you don't have to do it this way. You can just type the number 165. It's fine. But if you want to do it with cell references, this is how to do it. So it's C9, but with $signs. You cannot use just regular C9. Now when I hit enter, then I can click and drag, and now it works. Now I have a formula that worked for the whole column. So how do we write that in our notes? Well, for the total, you can say to yourself, look, this total could be a number, or it's $C, $number, right? And that number changes from problem to problem, so I can't tell you what it's going to be. In this example, it was C9, but it will be different for every problem. All right, now when we did this in the notes, we did not want all these decimal places. That's just ridiculous. So we want to lower how many decimal places there are. So you want to highlight the column. Now to do that, don't drag the column. I mean, you can in this case because it's going to work out the same, but it won't always. You want your cursor to kind of be an arrow in the middle of the box. And then you click and drag. Or if you don't have a mouse and that's too hard, hold down your Shift key and then hit arrow down, 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 and that will highlight them so that they're all blue. That's what you're shooting for. All right, so then now that they're all blue, there's a button up here that decreases the decimal places. It even says that if you hover. It's got a 0 with an arrow pointing to the left. So you just click that and just keep clicking it until you get as few decimal places as you want. Ooh, I went too far. I only have 2 decimal. All right, so let me hit the increase decimal place one, which is this one with the double 0. There we go. Now I have 3 decimal places. Okay, so for rounding, you want to highlight your column that you're trying to round, or the cell, right? But in this case, we're trying to do the whole column. And then you use the 0 point, actually it's 0.0 and then an arrow. It has an arrow to the left. That's what you're trying to do, right? That button in the ribbon. Okay, so that's done. Next, let's find the cumulative frequency. Now, the cumulative frequency, the first one, is strange because it's always the same as the regular frequency. These 2 cells will always be the same. So you can just type 5 if you want, or you could type equals C2, but be careful because we don't want the rest of them like that. So I'm going to hit the little X because I don't want that suggestion. So either C2 or just type the number yourself, right? Okay, then I want to add this C2 that, or excuse me, E2 that I just found plus the 8 that's over there. That will gather the frequencies as I go. So the formula is equal E2 plus C3. And I've done this one so much it actually knows what I'm doing, but for most people it doesn't automatically pop up as a possibility. So equals E2 plus C3. E2 is the one above it. It's got a little orange box around it. And C3 is over here in the frequency column. Hit enter and then click on that cell again and then drag it down. Or if you don't have a mouse and it's too hard, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, 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 or Command if you're on a Mac. Command C to copy, Command V to paste. All right, so let's write notes to ourselves. For the cumulative frequency, my V is strange there. Cumulative. Okay, so for cell E2, it's always equal to C2. Always the same. You can type it or you can write it either way. For cell E3, it's always equal E2 plus C3. That formula never changes. And then you drag it down. Right? Drag it down the column. All right, last column. We're almost there. All right, so for the cumulative relative frequency, we want to type the cumulative frequency, which was E2. And again, it's the same thing we did for relative frequency. Either you type 165, which is fine, right? You can type 165, hit enter, and the check mark, and you're grand, right? It's just dragging it automatically for you. That's all that was. Or if you want to be fancier about it, you can type equals E2 divided by, the cell was C9, but you want to give it dollar signs. So that way it's got $C, $9. That's where the 165 is, and it locks it in place. And then you can drag that down or copy and paste it down. Don't worry about the 0 at the bottom. Just delete that. That's nothing. You should end up at the bottom with the same values, right? See how both of these values are 165? That's good. That's what it should be. They should be the same there. If anything else shows up like this, just delete it. You don't want that. There's nothing there. That's garbage. Similarly, they should both end at 1, right around there, right here. So this should be 1 and this should be 1. Right? So those cells should all be the same. If they're not, you've done something wrong. All right, so let's write this out. Cumulative relative frequency. So we're basically taking the cumulative frequency and we're going to divide it by the total. That's the plan. So in cell F2, we type equals E2 divided by the total. And you can do the total as a number or as $C, number, right? It just depends on which way you want to do it, but either way would work. All right, we're almost finished. Now we have to finish this off as an assignment. So we have found all of these things with draggable formulas and great. Now all we have to do is make a chart and upload it, and we're done. All right, so let's make a chart. It says highlight the frequencies, but not including the total. You do not want that 165. You want 5, 8, 16, everything, all the frequencies, and you can get the title if you want. And again, I'm doing that by clicking and pulling my mouse down. You can also do it with Shift. Hold down your Shift button and arrow down, 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 and that will also do it. You're not dragging, right? Dragging would cause the number of students to be dragged, which isn't what you want at all. You want to move your cursor down in a way that highlights. So again, if you click on the top cell, Shift and then down arrow, that will work. Then you click Insert, Chart. and it will make a chart. Now over here on the right side, it's become this chart editor. We don't need that. So you can hit the little X and just make it go away. You don't need that. And then you have to click on the graph to kind of make it so that there's a blue box around it. And then you got to shove it out of the way, right? You can shove it down or you can shove it to the right. That's why I gave some extra space at the bottom of the spreadsheet to give it some room. So shove it over here or shove it over here, shove it off of your thing. Oh, my bad. I just realized we've never made this less decimal places. We got to do that. So we got to go here, highlight those, and hit the less decimals button. Right? Again, because we only want 3 decimal places. Oh, very important to do that. All right, so we've got our less decimal places. We don't need all of this highlighting. I was just doing that for you guys so that you understand how things match, but you can leave the highlighting in there or not, either way. Now all you have to do is share it or upload it. So the easiest way to do this is to share. So you click share and you change it so that anyone with the link, instead of restricted, anyone with the link as a viewer, you copy the link and then you go to Canvas and you're going to upload it. So here we are in Canvas. If I scroll down, I've got a web URL submission type. So I can click that and then I can paste my link right in here. And it takes in a second. And then it's ready to go. When it's ready, it'll say submit assignment. So when I click submit assignment, it should have given me confetti, but there it is. You should see confetti. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to download it as a PDF. Oh, next week, not. You cannot do a PDF. I'm sorry. You could download it as a CSV file or an Excel file. But again, if you're doing this in Google Spreadsheet, there's no point to that. It should allow you to upload an Excel file if you're working in Excel or a CSV file. But if you're working in Google, you should be able to just share. Again, if there's some issue, you could download it as a CSV file and upload that CSV file. Which would mean over here, instead of the URL upload, you would do it as a submission, a particular submission. In other words, you would choose file upload for your upload. And then that's it. So you have learned how to build a spreadsheet. Hopefully you took very good notes on how to do it, because if you're my student, you're going to have to do this many times. And I believe several other instructors are also doing it this way. And of course, you might be able to shrink down these instructions for yourself and put them on your note sheet for the exam, right? Because you don't have to memorize it so much as you have to know how to use it and be able to apply it to different problems.